Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of The Mistake Zone, your weekly dose of our lives and the mistakes within them. My name is Jaren Wade. Joining me, as always, one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Matt Alba. Hey, Matt.
Yo.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Matt, that's great. We're here joined by another one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Rakush. Hey, Rakush.
Hey, that's me.
How are you doing?
Jaren, I'm good. The Leafs are out of the playoffs. Life's great. Sun's still shining. It's past 8 p.m. What else could I ask for?
Fair enough, Rakush. Look at you living your life after not being here for a week. How are you doing, man? Since we haven't heard from you in 2 weeks, are you okay?
Yeah. It was just one of those real life things come up, work things come up that you have to prioritize more than hanging out with friends sometimes. And so, yeah, it was just one of those weeks where I needed to take a little bit of time. But I'm back here, and life's good now.
That's fair.
You know what makes it better?
What's up?
I'm here with friends.
Ooh.
Wow,
Jared. Wow.
About that, Rakush.
About that. Wow, holy shit.
But on a more serious note, not that serious, but there was something that I was going to bring to the show last week, but I thought it would be more fitting if Rakush was here as well, just because I think this might potentially be up, both your alleys. But the week before last, my partner and I went to a concert. We saw Japanese Breakfast live in Toronto. I think her project, that project, Japanese Breakfast, might be familiar to, gaming adjacent fans, since she did perform at Summer Games Fest around, I think it was 4 years ago now, when she did a song for Sable, but she's been around for a minute now and got to see her live in Toronto. But the one thing I wanted to bring up from that concert was the opening act. And so for the opener, it was this sort of, they describe it as a music project, but the band Ginger Root, which I think they described their band as aggressive elevator soul. So the reason I wanted to kind of tell you guys about them, one, I thought they were jamming, just really good cruising around music, walking my dog music. From all the songs I've heard so far, I really like the delivery on No Problem. But specifically, what I wanted to highlight about Ginger Root's set was their kind of overall stage production, and accompanied by, so it was a four-piece band. I think the central musician for on lead guitar, vocals, and synthesizer, and then you had a drummer, then you had a bass player. But then you also had a videographer who was kind of going around stage with a camera on their shoulder, connected to the two kind of projection screens on both sides of the stage. And throughout the performance, you just had the shots coming from the cameraman's camera, of course, being intercut by different effects and small little skits and commercials produced by the band as well, just for this overall presentation. And I think I've been seeing you know me, I come from a college music background, college radio background, excuse me, and I've seen plenty of acts live, but I think this is the first time I've seen a cameraman being part of the band, or at least being part of the touring band. So I think in terms of one of my neat things I've discovered within the past 2 weeks, definitely check out Ginger Root if that sounds like something up your alley, especially if you do like quote unquote aggressive elevator soul music. But that was really fun. And if you have a chance to check them out live, do recommend, since I don't know about you guys, but sometimes the openers might be a bit hit or miss when you go to a show, and this was definitely one of the hits for me personally. But Matt, since we're sharing what we've discovered over the past week or two, what's one thing that you've also discovered that you'd want to share with the class?
I mean, Jaren, I have stumbled into a new manga series that I am begrudgingly reading.
Matt, I don't like that little laugh you did to yourself.
Jaren?
Yeah. Usually followed up by Matt feeling very embarrassed about something and just trying to like power through it. So
No, Rakush, we've known Matt for, what is it, over close to 2 decades now. And as Matt's friend, I know when he gives that giggle that this is something that it's not necessarily embarrassing, but one of those "hoo boy."
it's a moment of like self-awareness in which Matt knows exactly what he's about to talk about and doesn't necessarily know if he wants to talk about it publicly.
Ooh.
I think Matt wants to talk about it publicly, but
Well, he's going to talk about it publicly. I don't know if he wants to talk about it publicly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Rakush, I think this might not really, hit for you, but Jaren, I think I can sucker into this. Because, Jaren, I think that you remember that we spent a lot of time talking about, I think we can call it one of our harem series of 2019 on Early Mistake Zone. Of quintessential quintuplets.
yes.
Jaren, what have I told you? I found a remixed version of quintessential quintuplets, and it is
Oh no.
almost like it is hitting on everything I liked about that manga, and I'm seeing everything I ended up not liking about that manga afterwards, but I can't stop reading it.
Matt, this feels like one of those moments where we should have went back to, stop me if you heard this before, 2019, where we talked about QQ for the first time. And a good goof would have been you just going word for word describing QQ and seeing if I'd noticed. Matt, if you described this manga as QQ, would I have noticed?
I think you would notice because one of the major differences, Jaren, is that instead of 5 girls, it's 4 girls. And I'm gonna, okay.
So you're saying it's in between We Never Learn and QQ, essentially.
It's somewhere in between there. But
wait, no, We Never Learn had 5 girls. My apologies. My apologies.
Was it 5? Oh, it was 5. Yes, you're right. It was 5. But the manga that I am talking about is called Midnight Heart Tune, or it is called Tune Into the Midnight Heart. But either way, the subtitle for it is then Finding the Girl Behind the Voice. And in essence, the kind of general starting plot of this manga series is that there is this like kind of depressed male main character when he was like a kid constantly listens to basically this audio live stream of this basically like this girl who kind of just does an audio live stream that not many people listen to. It ends up being that only like he is the only kind of regular listener of her. And then this is happening when like the main character is in middle school, and then afterwards she announces, hey, this is my last broadcast, and she kind of does the last broadcast, shouts him out, like tells him, oh, thank you for listening this whole time, like you were really my only listener, like I love you and whatnot. And then after the broadcast ends, she deletes all of her content.
Ooh.
And from that point on, this guy's mission has basically been to find this girl. And once they, move to high school, the guy hears this voice coming over the PA system. And, it's a girl from the broadcasting club. And he recognizes it as the kind of live streamer's voice. The live streamer goes by the handle Apollo. And, he rushes to the broadcasting booth, and wouldn't you know it, there's 4 girls in there who are all, different kinds of aspiring voice-related career things, and that's why they're all there. And he, now has to find out which one of them is Apollo. And I think one thing that I actually really like about, the kind of start of this is that they quickly establish, hey, he fully does ask, hey, is one of you Apollo? And none of them answer that thing. Like, they all kind of just, like, brush it off or they kind of like skirt around it on like who is Apollo. And then, just to confirm that Apollo is one of them, at the end of the first chapter, Apollo starts up a live stream again. And, they kind of say, hey, like, yeah, like I was there. It was like good to see you again or whatever. But I couldn't tell you who I was for, reasons.
Sure.
And
manga reasons, I'm
manga
assuming.
reasons, yeah, of course, manga reasons. And I don't know. I think the premise is like good enough that I really want to stick with this, and I think that the characters are QQ enough that I really, really want to stick with this.
How many chapters deep is it so far, Matt?
It is currently 75 chapters deep, which is
that's approaching Beefy Boy status. Wait, I would say that's Beefy Boy status.
That's a decent amount of chapters.
Wait, that's interesting. What do you guys consider Beefy Boy?
For me personally, a Beefy Boy manga, you'd have to have at least 3 volumes worth of content for me to say that's beefy.
That's beefy?
Yeah, because like, I think I'm looking at it from the modern manga perspective. Like, there is like the very beefy boys of like, like One Piece, Bleach, like Naruto that are going over like 300-400 chapters easily, right?
One Piece is over like 1,600 chapters.
Yeah, but like I'm just saying, like, yeah, those are like easily, they're their own kind of category. I feel like for modern manga, I don't think I really see many that get to like 300 or 400 anymore. So I feel like once you're approaching 100, I feel like it starts to become a little bit beefy. But that is specifically for modern manga.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like 100 to 110 chapters is where it starts getting beefy, because then you've got 10 volumes. Once you get into like double-digit volumes, yeah, I would say like that's beefy. The one that just caught me off guard was Jaren saying like 3 volumes, because that's just 30 chapters.
How long are the volumes the volumes I'm reading are like anywhere between 12 to like 22.
Really?
So this might be a perspective type thing where
I guess
I'm used to a volume, kind of, let's say averaging around 15. So that takes me to around 45 to 50-ish.
Interesting.
Maybe I guess 4 volumes would be more so beefy going by those numbers. But I think I'm also used to reading a few runs that are lasting 3 to 4 volumes in general, where if I can expect to read 1, 2, and be caught up within 3-4 hours, I'd still say that's a Beefy Boy read, since my attention span is shot.
See, Jared's part of the TikTok generation.
Yep.
Well, that would make us part of the TikTok generation.
I mean, Matt, how many TikToks did I link you to today? So
no, I guess like that's also just kind of like an indication of like how much I read just out of Shonen Jump and not really much anywhere else, I guess.
I mean,
but yeah, like anything under 100 for me doesn't feel like it's entering beefy territory personally. But yeah, I can. Yeah.
I guess like my perspective is also skewed just because like once it passes like 50, it's been around for a year. And I feel like the amount of things I see get axed sub 50 is also probably warping my perception of it.
Fair.
Also fair.
Yeah. That's a good point. There's also like a lot of like bi-weekly or monthly series now as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But
let's cut to semantics aside. Matt, let's get to the real meat and potatoes of this manga. Tell me about our 4 heroines and which one is the Ichika of the group.
I think the Ichika of the group is Rika, who is our aspiring singer. Because, she follows the kind of like, coolish kind of One-san sort of vibe to her.
Okay.
I think followed up by that is our Itsuki, and they kind of put together Yotsuba and Itsuki here to make Shinobu, who is the announcer, who is, kind of like a Genki girl, but not that Genki, and she's sort of kind of proper to her as well. She is, she has to be an announcer, but she flubs her pronunciation. So she, she can't really like get that right. We have our Miku,
of course,
who is Iko, who is of course, Jaren. I think you're not gonna be surprised at this. She is an aspiring VTuber, and she is the assertive shy girl type. And Jaren, of course, the one that I'm rooting for, Nene, our voice actress, who is the tsundere. I didn't know that kind of looking back at characters that I tend to like in the harems. I didn't realize that I like the Cinderella type that much. But
Big fair.
I think the thing for me though that really kind of sells me on this harem in particular, because when I look back at like QQ and We Never Learn, I think that in those harems in particular, the male main character himself does have like I think a pretty good like personality type to them, and the male main character in this one named Arisu is I think a really really good male main character because he's basically he's like raised to be an elite person. So he's like, he's basically good at everything. He's like that type of like character, but he's almost like pompous in a funny way. Like, what was the name of that manga? Matt here, just putting in an edit. I ended up struggling with the manga name here for a while and I ended up getting it wrong. The name of the series that I was thinking of here was Haven't You Heard I'm Sakamoto? He's sort of like that, but like if you mix him with Kazuma from Konosuba. From Konosuba.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know, like he was really a good character. He actually is a very supportive character. He's pompous in a very funny way. And this manga is kind of going around a lot of the obviously why don't you just ask them? So they established that at the start. There was a point in the manga where it's very clear, yeah, all the girls like him, and he just calls them all out, saying, "Hey, I know you are all in love with me. Please stop." Like I'm trying to, because his whole goal here is, since he doesn't know who Apollo is, he's trying to just make them all reach their dream. Because it turns out all of them are, of course, pretty garbage at what they want to do, and kind of everything going together is, I think, a very fun read for me, and I'm going to be very sad once once my girl loses the bull, because man, I think of being able to follow this as it's like coming out. There's so many people who don't like the Sundays that the comments are rough. But
not 75 chapters deep. Call it right now. Who's Apollo in this manga?
See, okay, that is actually something I also wanted to touch on, because there are so many. This manga is doing a lot of weird fake outs in terms of establishing who Apollo is, because they'll like flashback to a like scene of Apollo talking, and they'll show, oh, it's this person with dark hair and light undertones. And there's only like one character like that. It's only Shinobu who is like that. And then they'll do another like flash forward where they're talking about the past, and it's like, oh, it was like really nice to meet you on the day of the fireworks. And oh, they only show one character meeting him on the day of the fireworks. And it's kind of, they're doing a lot of fake out that I am kind of like weird on, because instead of having a anonymous or like a vaguely drawn character, they're drawing characters that have aspects of like characters that are in the harem, and I'm kind of weirded out by that. I don't know how like you guys would feel about that kind of thing.
To be fair, I haven't read this yet, but when you were talking about the amount of fake outs, all I could think is, those closing few arcs of QQ, and it turned out not that Ray could have been, was it her name Ray? But Ray could have been any one of them, just because, hey, they were probably all there in those defining moments in some capacity. So I think when you can't hide behind the quintuplets aspect or the familial aspect, where of course you can have characters be there in the flesh and still be not who you think they are, since they look so much alike. But from the premise you're telling us, it's that all he's going through is via voice. So for me personally, without reading it, I'm really curious to see how that's handled, since it would feel like you would have this one central character trying to remind our protagonist about certain aspects, while other ones are still trying to kind of manipulate him in a way as well to make him believe they were there as well. Where visually, how is that kind of handled to the reader? Uh, I'm not sure if it's great considering how skeptical you are, but
Hmm.
are they doing something to help kind of, you know, suspend your disbelief a bit?
I mean, the kind of way that they write off going solely by the voice is that, they kind of talk about, hey, they establish that Apollo has deleted all of their content, so it's not there anymore. And they established that, hey, Apollo had done this a long time ago. So he is pulling the voice only from memory. And,
Hmm.
I think they established that, hey, all the characters have enough similarity to that voice that it is like questionable on whose voice it is. And if this does become an anime, I'm interested in seeing how they're going to handle it at that point. I'm assuming they're just gonna, like, I don't know, put a filter on whenever Apollo themselves is talking, but
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, they're also kind of doing this thing where the main character is remembering bits and pieces of the stream whenever one of the girls mentions, hey, it's like, oh, I liked this thing, or I had this thing, or I want to do this sort of thing. And they're kind of like all getting like divided between the harem girls. So
Okay.
it is like kind of doing they're not fully establishing one of them as a winner yet.
Okay. And not realistically,
Mm-hmm.
when we follow some of these harem manga, these
Mm-hmm.
harem stories, if you will, the t there's a good chance they might tend to drag where 75, whether that be a beefy boy or still, honestly, 75 in a harem seems still pretty early. Matt,
Mm-hmm.
do you see this dragging? Or could you see this ending within, I don't know, the next 75 chapters?
I don't think it'll end in the next 75 chapters, but I don't think that's like really dragging. Because like the story arcs themselves are all actually pretty long. Like, I think in these 75 chapters, there's been like three story arcs. So it's like 20 chapters a story arc almost. And they did kind of just like hit the point where all the girls have openly admitted they are interested in the main character. So I think that they, can have another like 100-ish left. And, Jaren, maybe another one 130, 150 if they do split routes at the end.
One could only hope, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
One could only hope.
Uh-huh.
But Matt,
Uh-huh.
in terms of the story or the story arcs so far,
Mm-hmm.
uh, is there any, just based on the first 75 chapters, once again, that you've read, are there any story arcs that could potentially be explored that you'd want to see them dive into based on kind of how the characters have been presented so far?
Mm, Not really. They're kind of like in the middle of most of the characters' story arcs right
Hmm.
now. Like the singer, for example, has just joined a record label. The VTuber has met like basically the Kizuna Ai equivalent of the what do you call it, their reality world, I guess, setting. And then the announcer and the voice actress have both joined a kind of like professional prep school. So there's a lot of like, we're like mid story thread on a lot of them, and I don't know. I think that there's a good amount of story to build there. But Jared, I feel like I feel like my Cinderella isn't gonna win this ball, and it makes me sad.
Okay. It's okay. Matt
Mm-hmm.
can't win them all,
Uh-huh.
unfortunately,
Uh-huh.
unless
Uh-huh.
there is some alt
Oh
endings that we
man.
get.
Gotta I hope. I hope. I hope.
But Rakush,
Yeah.
since you missed out on the great QQ, let's say Wars of 2019, what are your stance on the harem genre and who? I guess let me just ask you that first before I begin to pry.
Uh-huh.
Um, I've been pretty quiet for the last 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Oh god, I've been talking about this for half
That's
an hour.
all.
God damn.
No, I talked about
30
Ginger Root
minutes.
for like 5, so you're okay.
No, it's all good.
Oh man.
Honestly, I don't know. It's not my preferred genre, I guess. Like, but
Mm-hmm.
also might just be I haven't really read one yet that I like.
But Rakush, I think the important question really here is,
Yes, Matt.
what's your favorite dere type?
What else we got to talk about, Jaren?
You like sundares? You like dere dere? You like kudere? You like what else is there? Mdere?
Man, can't believe I'm missing 2 episodes in a row here. That's crazy.
Oh man.
Matt,
Mm-hmm.
tell our friends one more time what are you reading, and does it get the Matt recommendation?
This reluctantly gets the Matt recommendation. It's called Tune In to the Midnight Heart, Finding the Girl Behind the Voice.
It's a long ass name.
Yeah. It's like the title and then its subtitle.
Fair.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair. So I found out about a new band I like. Matt found out about a new harem manga that he likes. Rakush, over the past 2 weeks, what have you discovered that you're currently into?
I mean, I've discovered. I don't know if I'm necessarily into, but I started playing Blueprints. Maybe we can start with that from the list because I know that you guys have talked about this quite a bit, and it was interesting. Like conceptually, it sounded like something I wanted to try out. Everything I looked up about it, it seemed like I really wanted to play it. It's on Game Pass, so it was like an easy commitment as well. And yeah, I've been running it for I would say around 17 hours at this point, so quite a bit of time, and
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. I'll be honest with you guys. I almost dropped it 2 to 3 hours in because I wasn't necessarily feeling kind of like, the cycle and like the cadence of like discovery and things like that in this game. But I do think the more I stuck around with it, and just like the more I've seen of it and the more things get revealed, I actually kind of appreciate how much care has gone into kind of building out this game world that they have set up. A big thing that, of course, helped out for me personally was also unlocking the shed and just kind of having access to some buffs and things like that. Figuring out some of like the permanent additions really helps out significantly. So like, yeah, I think like the game opens up nicely, even if it doesn't necessarily start in the most convenient place, let's say. And yeah, like, I've just kind of been like grinding it and going through it. I was telling Matt before we started the recording earlier, Jaren, that I had a run this morning I really thought was going to be the one, but wasn't to be. So I'm still kind of continuing it. And Matt also revealed that what I thought was supposed to be the end might actually only be the halfway point, which kind of insane. So yeah, let's see how long I stick around with it. But it's interesting. I am liking it, but I'm also a little bit conflicted by just kind of like how I feel about this game. I do wish some of the quality of life things were a little bit different. Like for example, I'll give you like a specific example. There is the I can't remember if it's called the dressing room or like the art room or something like that, but basically it's like there is a candle holder that you can interact with that opens up a safe. Great. Cool puzzle to solve, all of that stuff. Now, there's a gem inside of the safe that I want to grab every single time because currency, you have to grab it.
Yeah.
The animation, when you see it over and over and over again, right? Like, it kind of just takes its sweet ass time. And there are certain elements like that that really just kind of make it a drag for me personally, where I'm like, okay, cool, I'm done. I just want to like, I'm done with the day. Let me start the new day. It takes like 30 seconds for like the whole animation to kind of happen and the zoom in and things like that. And I suspect it's there to load up all of the things in this world. But I do kind of wish that like, some of these things were a little bit like condensed or just like trimmed out a little bit more than they currently are. And that's maybe the biggest criticism I have about just kind of like this game, which is just that for a game that is designed to be as repetitive as it doesn't necessarily make the experience faster as the game goes along. And that kind of sucks for me.
Yeah, I feel like that particular safe is really the only one that locks you in such a long animation. I feel like any other like animation that works like that, or any other interaction, I guess, doesn't lock you in that same way.
There's a
Which is really
couple, well, not related to the safe always, Like, I think
Mm.
that was just kind of like the first example that came to mind of like this motion that I'm
Mm.
doing over and over again just kind of takes a little bit too long, right? Or
Ah,
even
I see.
something like, for example, the PC. There's a password you're supposed to put to connect to the network.
Hmm.
You can just hit left trigger to load up the last password, but you cannot do that with
Oh.
saves. That, for example, kind of sucks, right? Where it's like the
Mm.
mechanic is clearly there to just load up a previous instance of like the password being entered. Even just like using something like that for like a safe that you've already opened up would make it tons
Hmm.
like more convenient for me. And it's just like stuff like that that I personally like, kind of feel a little bit bummed out about. The other quality of life thing that I know it's an inherent choice to do it this way, but the idea that the hints are temporary or like, impermanent within just kind of like this instance itself, right? Like, I wish there were a better way in game to keep track of it,
What do you mean?
because
Which ones are you talking about?
there's a bunch of hints around the each room almost has its own hint, right? Like
Mm.
when you
Oh, like
get
the notes or like stuff like
the
that.
notes and stuff, yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Today's date, that's in the maid's room or that's in the vault. The
Hmm.
breaker box that you have to solve to unlock one of the permanent buffs,
Hmm.
things like that, right? Like, these hints live in other rooms. So as far as like actually solving them is concerned, you can figure it out with the hints that are provided. But what
Yeah.
sucks about it is that there's no real way to kind of like have a journal going of the hints, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
It's like you kind of have to like you literally have to write down notes and stuff like that, and that kind of, for me, again, just kind of flies in the face a little bit of like, the repetitive nature of this game, where
Hmm.
it's like, to me, a game like this should get at least a little bit faster as you go along, so that like you can get through like instances a little bit quicker, or like, things like that. And I just don't feel like that element is present in this game. In that way, it is a little bit of a throwback. Like, it does remind me a little bit of like those old Myst games, or what have you, right? But like, it yeah, I just kind of wish like for a modern day game it had a better game log, essentially.
Mm.
I think for I guess to your 2 points, I think for the patience one, I definitely do agree that this is a game that definitely will test your patience,
Hmm.
especially the more you go on, because hate to say it to you, Rakush, if that one room safe is already grinding your gears, there are a lot more, not a lot more, but there are definitely some instances where after, let's say, the first two times I've done it, I kind of roll my eyes every time the animation plays, or not necessarily the animation, but the loop, the specific loop
Yeah.
that you need to do is definitely there. Where depending on my mood of the day, it's either, oh, that's part of the charm that this game took, like, what was it, 8 7 8 years to develop. Maybe that's the pace it wants you to play at, but at the same time, there would be there for me personally, there is a benefit to streamlining it just a bit, just because I find that even my shortest runs will be 15 to 20 minutes, where
Hmm.
yeah, I could go without seeing that safe animation, I can go without seeing this lever animation, so just be ready for that. I think in terms of the recording and the journaling aspect, that's something that has become another talking point that I've come to enjoy about the game when I have talked to others who are currently playing this, where I think it's it's similar to her story in a way, where that didn't have a in-game record function or journal function, and similar to that, blueprints right away tells you, hey, that's not going to be available in the game. It might be in your best interest to figure out a way to record something, whether it be a journal, whether it be an Excel file, or whether it be some sort of paid app that you use to assist you when you're writing your novel. And just seeing how everyone tackles their own journal, their own recording process has kind of been something that I find a bit novel to it, just because I forget the game that I was talking to you guys about recently where no, it was it Metaformat where I was kind of annoyed at their lack of journaling system or another kind of RPG. But for some reason, I'm giving it a pass to Blueprints because I feel like that's part of kind of the appeal to help personalize this experience. Where, yeah, it's kind of a bummer that I'm sorting through 13 folders, an Excel file with like 15 pages, but that's an experience that I've tailored to myself that uh, I've kind of come to enjoy it. Where if there was just a simple journaling system, that might make it to be a lot more to be desired. Where I can see where the frustrations might come from, but I
Hmm.
think that's where I've come to at peace to it in a bit. Where Matt, how's your organization, for example? And is this something? I guess this is hasn't been something we've talked about, other than each of one of us having their own journal. But how
Hmm.
has your organization kind of come now that you've come to 80 hours plus of the game?
I think that my organization thing is like pretty, I think very good for me because it's basically, I use a program called Obsidian, which is basically like OneNote, except it has a bit more customization to it. Like I have breakdowns of like, oh, I have sections for, hey, these are just screenshots for rooms, which I think is probably just a very strong point for playing it on PC versus Rakush. I'm assuming you're playing it on console.
No, I'm on
Um,
PC with the Game Pass.
oh,
Hmm.
okay, okay. I thought you were playing it on console, but
No, which
yes,
I have
mhm.
another point about that, but finish your thought and I'll get to
Yeah,
it.
because like I've been able to kind of organize my stuff into like, oh, I have a subheading for characters, and then every character has their own page. Same thing for items, and then I have the same thing for rooms. I have, um, and then I have just like kind of floating ones that are notable things that stand out to me. And I think the thing that I really kind of like about having your own note system is that it lets you have good, I don't know, like eureka moments or, oh, I have just the right thing for this type of moments where, oh, I knew that that thing was going to be a clue, or I guess like, oh, this thing, I guess I can just kind of throw away, or being able to realize, hey, I need information from this one room. Oh, good thing I took it down. And I think you don't get that if you had an in-game kind of thing automatically giving you notes, but I think that that is kind of just like a quality of life versus, I don't know, this weird enjoyment type thing, which I think is going to bounce a lot of people
So
in the end. Mhm.
before jumping into that other point, one thing I want to clarify about what I wish the game had was a journaling system and not just telling you that you've unlocked a hint permanently, right? So,
I
like,
see, I see.
what I'm looking for is just a way for me to take the information down potentially within the game itself. So, this kind of ties into like one of the things, for example, Matt, you're saying like your system is fine because you have all these different apps open. Jaren, you said you have all these spreadsheets going. I have one monitor. I'm playing it on one monitor. Like I don't have a
Mm,
second monitor. I'm playing it full screen mode because that's how I like playing these games. Um, to me, that is the difficulty. Is if you're just playing this with one monitor, and this is again like that's an exclusively sort of like PC enhanced experience of like, oh, you have two monitors. Okay, let me just put this document on this other tab here. Let me play
mhm.
this game on this window here. Cool. There you go. Um, but if you only have one monitor and you're all tabbing every single time to do this, whatever, right? That's breaking the game flow for me personally. And
Mhm.
I understand the charm of taking your own notes. There's no reason to say, oh, you can just write it down. Sure, yes, you can just write it down. That's another option. If that works for you, more than happy to encourage you to do that. Right? For me personally, there's a disconnect between how I register that information myself. Like I've never been a good note taker. Like there's a reason I flunked out of college twice because I didn't take good notes. So, I don't want to be taking notes in a video game like this as well, right? Now, it's also the format
Mm-hmm.
that this game is released in. It is very much a board game. This to me is very certain, like just playing through it. If they had made this into a physical board game, I would have fully understood it and I would have fully been like, yeah, I buy into this. Like, I see exactly what they're trying to do with that. It's a video game.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, not every video game is going to be the same, but the video game format is a little bit more accessible and it's a little bit more, I think, like, it accessible, I think, is the big one, yes, but like you're a little bit more involved within the world itself. That like asking somebody to then like step out and like not immerse themselves into the game and just take notes and stuff like that. Cool. Okay, that's the game
Mm-hmm.
choice. I respect it. I just don't personally like that decision without having an in-game journaling system of sorts. Like something I was even thinking about. Okay, cool. Screenshots. Matt, that's what you're doing, right? Taking screenshots.
Oh yeah, basically.
Add a camera to this game
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then just allow you to take the photo and organize the photo into a folder based on your liking, right? Like you're basically introducing an in-game journal management system instead of an inventory management system. Am I making that sound easier than it probably is to create? Yeah, I'm not a game developer, so I cannot tell you what the nuances that would go into something like that. But you provide the player still the agency to kind of take the notes exactly how they want, or to take the pictures exactly how they want, and to organize it the way that they want as well. And there's a like potentially at the end of the game, there's actually another quantifiable way of looking at like how unique the player's journey is and things like that as well. And I think
Mm-hmm.
like again, am I being like what's the term? Am I like backseat driving? Yeah, I didn't make this game, right? These are just things that I would personally prefer to have in this game. That it feels a little bit of a bummer that there's not a better system in it. Fully respecting like Jaren, your experience, Matt, your experience. I can only really speak from my experience with this game, and I think that's maybe I'm not quite there yet with like just the journal system. And I think like for all all the time that I've spent kind of like saying the negatives about this game, maybe I should finish it with the fact that almost everything else about this game I do actually really like. Um Conceptually fantastic. It's very addictive. Like time has flown on a couple of sessions where I think it's like 10 p.m. Next thing I know it's midnight. So like it absolutely is a phenomenal game. A couple of things would have made it maybe a far more entertaining game for me. Beyond just like saying, "Hey, this is objectively cool." That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fair. Just to clarify, I've been playing this on one monitor, and I think my last runs where I've seen credits, those were all tab doozies for me
Yeah.
personally. But yeah, I think this is a game that really, again, it goes back to the patience thing. It's test your patience, not only with its UI things, not only with how things are presented, but really how much of it clicks with you and how much it wants you to play by a weird set of rules that aren't necessarily being restricted to the game. Where I think, again, without going to too much spoilers, since I think, Matt, we ended off last week's episode or spoiler cast portion with, we'll
Mm-hmm.
probably end up doing a proper, not a proper, but a follow up Vault episode about this, especially when Rakush sees more or finishes the game as well. But I think there's also a meta aspect to the game that I'm still a bit, I'm not sure where I sit on those puzzles specifically, where maybe I'm not understanding what the answers are supposed to be, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's aspects of the game that, to that point Rakush was trying to make, really take you out of the confines of the game that make me kind of a bit more okay with how much of a meta physical aspect I'm doing with my journals, with my screenshots, with my organization. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I've talked to friends who have actually dropped it at that 2 hour, 3 hour mark just because it wasn't for them. Where by the time the year-end list come out for just everywhere from outlets to users, I'm really curious to see where Blueprints ultimately ends up kind of in the general discourse, just
Mhm.
because with how popular it's getting, uh, I'm also seeing a lot of people trying it out via word because of word of mouth and then dropping it because wow, this isn't what I was expecting at all.
Hmm.
But
I will.
uh
Yeah, I
yeah.
feel like the last thing I would say about this game, I would encourage people to get to like the 5 hour mark. I think that's where like you'll truly understand what your personal tolerance for this game
Yeah.
is. Because I feel like within 5 hours, if you haven't unlocked at least one, for example, of the permanent buffs,
Hmm.
you're probably not gonna progress much in this game or enjoy this game much. To me personally, I feel like 5 hours is probably a sweet spot. So if I were to encourage someone that's listening to this episode to play the game, I would say 5 hours. It's the same way we talk about anime being like, give it 3 episodes. Like to me, that's
Uh-huh.
kind of like the same
Uh-huh.
thing here.
Yeah. Like I think if you don't really figure out how to unlock the Western shed, like it probably isn't a game for you in the end.
I think that's a good call. Yeah.
Actually, yo, wait, hang on, Rakush. Speaking about the unlocks, have you had any like fun eureka moments while you were playing on any of like I guess the more longer term puzzles?
I think the water room was the big one where like I didn't necessarily realize there was anything unique about the water fountain. Although I had
Mm.
some suspicions about this is kind of spoilerish, of course, so like maybe we'll timestamp it in the description of the episode. But like
Mhm.
at first, I was kind of like, okay, yeah, something might come up later on, right? But like I thought it would be a little bit more like in your face when it happens. Whereas like I get this water room, and then I see that oh holy shit, like you can actually like adjust water levels for these different places. And so like that was really unique and like that was interesting, and I'd gotten that also like right after I had unlocked the swimming pool. And so
Mm.
like there was a lot of cool moments with that where I kind of I think stumbled into the fountain thing because I was just kind of like draining it a little bit, but then like I didn't drain it fully, and then I'd reset the day, and the next day starts, and there's no water in the fountain, and I'm like, wait, what the fuck? Like there's stairs? What the fuck? So
Uh-huh.
like I
Uh-huh.
think that for me was like a really cool eureka moment of like, oh shit, okay, like maybe I need to pay more attention to just kind of like the things around me. And
Mhm.
then I think
Mhm.
like another one was I forget which blueprint it was, but like it's the one that you unlock from digging behind the tent. And like you get
Yes.
that message. I can't remember what you get that message from, but like there is yeah, there's like this message basically scattered across the place that like I found really interesting as well. So yeah. There's a couple of those moments. I think there's a
Mhm.
couple of those really neat moments. I think the tomb was another really interesting one where like I I kind of like stumbled into interacting with one of the statues first, and I was like, oh shit. Also,
Mhm.
transparently, like once I interacted with the first one, I did quickly look it up because I was at a point with the game where I'm like, I don't fucking know, dude. Like, I need to just start like reading up on some stuff.
Mm.
And so, like, the tomb, I definitely read up on, and I'm like, what am I doing here? Because it was way too big of a space.
I see. Mhm.
But yeah, I think there's been a couple of those moments. I don't know if you'd get those within like the first 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. So I think we'll probably get to a proper blueprint spoiler cast. Maybe in a few months when we do need a vault episode. But that's blueprints. I think by now all our friends out there listening will know where we kind of stand on the game. It definitely is divisive, but at the same time, if it does sound like the puzzle aspect, and even in some ways, you if you want to test your organization capacity, this might be a game for you. But speaking about Game Pass, boys, I've been
Mhm.
playing a game as my Game Pass expiration date is uh, quickly approaching.
Mhm.
And I've been playing Doom: The Dark Ages,
Yes.
featuring the Doom Slayer, who you might know from popular games such as Fortnite and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3.
Hmm.
And I'll be honest, I think my history with the Doom franchise is pretty on the limited side. Uh, I've played Doom 64, and there was one time, I believe, when we were in high school, that I saw one of our Comtech teachers playing Doom on one of the school PCs. And I
Uh-huh.
think that's really my affinity for the franchise. And I'll admit it, even with all the high praise and critically acclaimed that 2016 has received, and even Eternal to a not necessarily the same extent, but still
Hmm.
pretty up there in terms of reception. I think the one thing that really sold me going into Doom: The Dark Ages was my newfound appreciation for parry systems. Because, boys,
Oh
I
man.
love
Uh-huh.
me a good parry. And I think it's that for someone who's played first person shooters um, for a while now, it is one of the genres that I kind of go to when I want to feel some sort of comfort gaming, since that's something that resonated with me since the days of Perfect Dark and GoldenEye growing up. I think the one thing that's getting me excited about Doom: The Dark Ages specifically is it's not necessarily a reliance on close quarter combat, but just how much the shield and even the melee aspects of combat really give you a lot more kind of freedom when it comes to combat variety, and
Hmm.
makes all its combat encounters something pretty fun. Just because, Matt, Rakush, I'm not sure if you guys have played any of the new Doom trilogy,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
if you have, can you? A lot of the, correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression of the trilogy is their combat scenarios are more akin to puzzles in a way, where in Doom: The Dark Ages, your kind of resources always feel scarce in a way, where you might be on the brink of losing all your shield or losing all your health or your ammo, and depending on how you finish a character or an enemy, that's will determine what resource you'll be given. And of course, depending on the difficulty level you're playing on, resources in your combat arena will also scale accordingly. Where
Hmm.
is that the backbone of what the new Doom trilogy essentially is?
Hmm. So I played the original, or sorry, the first of the trilogy that is currently
Hmm.
going on.
Yeah, 2016. Yeah.
I would say probably the first 3 quarters of the game is a little bit more just pure action, with a little bit of inventory management and ammo management with like how you kill the monsters. Becomes a little bit more prevalent near the end. But for the most part, I would say you can play it like a pretty standard action game. I
Hmm.
didn't get a chance to play
Hmm.
Eternal, but from everything I've heard about Eternal, it becomes a lot more prevalent in that game. And it's something that a lot of people didn't necessarily enjoy about that game from just kind of like reading up on it and hearing people talk about that game. Specifically with like, it's like kill person with this weapon to get this. And it's
Hmm.
kind of like
Hmm.
it becomes a little bit tedious, and there is a fine line in between like, it being good at ammo management and then just being tedious. And it felt like it went a little bit too far on the tedious side of things.
Yeah, like I never finished 2016 or Eternal. I actually don't even think I played Eternal, but 2016 I played a bit. It was very, like what you said, actiony. I didn't get to the end when it would, I guess, become more puzzly. I did kind of
Okay.
bounce off it, and I do feel like Dark Ages, at least a very early part of Dark Ages that I played, is like kind of reminiscent of what I felt in 2016, where it is, a very, like, I think, yeah, they are both very fast paced games, and the kind of resources that you're getting from the game just all feel so limited. I think I
Mhm.
just don't like that the melee has has an ammo count. Basically, I
Yeah.
really don't
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Where I think that's where. So I was going into the Dark Ages personally with that kind of hanging over my head of, oh, it's going to be pretty demanding when it comes to resource management and how you approach these. That's where the kind of the puzzle aspect
Hmm.
um, was in my head, just based kind of on osmosis and what I've been hearing going in. So I was kind of pleasantly surprised where uh, I've played about a third of the Dark Ages so far, and I'll I'll go into that why it's kind of taking me so long right now. So that it does have 22 chapters. I'm currently on chapter 7, but I think from the combat encounters I've done so far, it isn't necessarily that puzzle focused. It is a lot more action packed, free form. Even though there are certain weapons that work better for specific enemies that you encounter, I think I've come to appreciate that the game has allowed me to dump most of my resources into my shotguns, into my shield, and into my melee. And I've still been able to handle so far every encounter that I've come across. Where, as someone who was a bit not necessarily intimidated, but kind of expected to do all of these kind of mental gymnastics, resource management. I think just from a run and gun and rip and tear and smash and bash standpoint,
Hmm.
it's checking all the boxes. But that's mostly just for the combat scenarios. There are two other kind of sections or gameplay, I guess, modes that you come across. One being the mecha kaiju portion where you, as the Doomslayer, get to board this giant Doomslayer mech, and then you go and essentially punch giant demons in the face. And on the flip side, there's also the dragon portions where you get to board your dragon with his doom armor. You fly around and essentially try to take down ships from what I've played so far. Where even as much as I find the combat, the gunplay, the shield play satisfying, I feel like the mech stuff and the dragon stuff specifically feel a bit underwhelming where I'm not getting the same satisfaction. Mostly because one, I don't think the mech hits feel that impactful. It lacks that oomph that I'm kind of looking for when you have a big
Hmm.
mech punching a big demon in the face. And with the dragon portions, I feel like combat revolves around dodging a lot more, where even that doesn't feel that impactful to me personally. And I just feel like the dragon doesn't control it that well. So I think as much as I'm enjoying the gameplay, I'm almost dreading having to do those specific portions again, just because I feel like they're a bit on the weaker side. But Matt, if you're
Hmm.
checking out the Dark Ages, have you done any of the robot and dragon stuff?
No, I only did the first two levels. Like the second level ends
Mhm.
with you like showing you the mech, and
Okay.
I don't know. I kind of just I just wasn't interested in the game after that point. Um, I did find like the kind of like melee stuff like fun to play with. I thought the parry system was very interesting. It is a bit too like look for the thing to parry kind of
Yeah.
like for me, and the everything has a lot more homing than I was expecting it to be, but I did get
Mhm.
used to that. But I don't know, I just like the flow, it just wasn't flowing for me properly. I think I'm going to give it like another couple more tries like this week. But yeah, I didn't try any of the mech stuff because I was too Jaren, I don't know if you had this issue, but I was very preoccupied by the fact that the enemies blend into the background so much for me
Yeah.
that I ended up turning on the accessibility settings so that things are like highlighted. And I think even at the low tier, the accessibility settings highlight too much, and I wish they highlighted not that much. But yeah, I ended up turning that on just for ease of visibility because that is a noisy kind of like noisy game. Like things don't pop out in the way that I would want them
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, I understand this is Doom's aesthetic, that really grim, heavy metal, hell-like atmosphere, but at the same time, yeah,
Hmm.
there was a lot of just me not knowing where attacks were coming from. So I do appreciate the level of accessibility options that this game presents. Uh, Even just going around all the different options, from the parry window that you can kind of adjust to even the colorblind aspects where you can just change it to whatever color you want the projectiles to be.
Mm.
So that's definitely something I do appreciate as well. But in terms of some of the character, or the enemy attack patterns, I do think the most I enjoy this game is when I'm fighting the bigger monsters,
Hmm.
kind of one on one, and they're, Matt, I like
Hmm.
it when this game feels more like a character action game where I
Yeah.
can specifically see the one enemy that's attacking me, where it's jumping, and then I can anticipate the attack and then parry.
Hmm.
Where I think that stuff feels really cool, and that's where um, I find it to really flow when you have a bunch of fodder enemies, kind of out and about. I think that's where the combat puzzle stuff really kicks in. Of okay, I need to kill this enemy to get ammo. I need to do my melee attack to generate shields, and then I need to parry so I can get uh, again my melee cooldown to have less of a
Hmm.
cooldown.
Hmm.
So I think once you're in that flow state, it's a lot more enjoyable. But I think for me personally, it just shows how much of a in a mood I am for that character action, one-on-one pairing attacks mindset. Where I
Hmm.
do like the run and gun aspect of Doom, but I think it's just showing me how much I'm kind of looking forward to, say, a Stellar Blade in a few weeks to hopefully get that
Oh man.
more closed combat feel. But I think one thing that's also adding time to my playthrough is that I do find I ran the game, I guess, on the hard equivalent for a bit. And then uh,
Hmm.
once you once I got to, I think it was chapter 5 or something, that's where the resource management really came in. And um, that's where I find myself kind of adjusting it uh, to, I guess, the normal setting. I still kept the higher parry window just because I don't want to think about parry windows.
Hmm.
But the reason I'm doing that is because if you pull up the map, it will tell you essentially where all the secrets are within the level.
Yeah.
And I think the first time I realized that I was constantly bringing up the map. Like every couple of steps, it would be me moving along, pausing the game. Okay, is there something here? No. Okay, I'll go another couple of steps. Wait, is there something here? No. And that was really
Yeah.
breaking up the flow for me, where I think so. The reason my playthrough right now is I'm doing the levels on normal, just front to back, beginning to end, in that combat flow just to feel cool. And then I'll run the level back to find all the secrets at a higher difficulty level just to
Hmm.
make it feel like I'm a real gamer trademark. But
Uh-huh.
um, I
Yeah.
will say that not,
Uh-huh.
I think I'm curious to see if you keep playing it because chapter 6 in particular, that's the first dragon level,
Hmm.
I almost bounced off
Mm.
just because the way that level is structured, it's a lot more open-ended and
Mm.
there's a lot more going on. And considering this how they handle the secrets, um yeah, it was kind of just a pain to kind of replay to find all the secrets is all I was gonna say. But
Yeah.
yeah, I
Uh-huh.
think with Doom the Dark Ages, it is something I'm enjoying for the most part, but I think it's just making me want to play more Zenless, if I had to be honest, more
Mm.
character action games. But just from a run and gun first person shooter standpoint, I think it is solid, and I am curious to go back to try 2016, but at the same time I do like the shield, I do like the focus on melee,
Hmm.
and if that isn't in the predecessors, which it isn't. Not sure if that is a sell for me, but
Yeah.
Matt,
Hmm.
since you have some time on your Game Pass still, are you thinking about checking it out or giving it a few more tries?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give it a few more tries. Like, I think I'm hoping that this gets like remedied more in the later levels, but kind of with the secrets, I I feel like this game has a lot of walking that I
Yes.
like wasn't expecting going in. I thought this was going to be way more like shoot bang bang type of a game. And the amount of walking in this game is killing me, especially since I'm not as map crazy as you are. So I'll open the map after like I don't know like 10 minutes of playing, and then I'll see that there was like a secret I don't know so far back, and I just like don't want to go back for it. I'll just like keep pushing forward. But yeah, like this has like a weird amount of adventuring that I wasn't expecting, and I don't know. I think I need more constant drip of action or a thing to like keep my mind focused on doing a thing that
Right.
Doom really isn't hitting for now, which is like really weird considering that like for the past like I don't know month I've been raving about blueprints, but I think since you're always looking for something in that game, it's always kind of engaging me in a way that the downtime in Doom and honestly like even kind of going back a week, like the downtime in Clair Obscura is like killing me there too. But yeah.
No, that's fair. I think my closing thought is I'm actually surprised at the story in Doom: The Dark Ages, or at least where it's kind of building up.
Uh-huh.
Where,
God.
without really getting into it, uh, essentially the Doomslayer is a tool to like these sentient beings, and not
Mhm.
Rakush. I think the Doomslayer doesn't want to be a tool for these
God.
sentiment for these beings. So I'm curious to see where that goes, and if he's able to break the shackles that appear to be on him. Where hopefully I'm going to be running and gunning on more alien ships than this hellscape,
Yeah.
which would really add, at least give a variety of different environments that you can go through. And just in chapter 7 now, are still 15 more chapters to go. So I'm hoping that uh, we'll see a bit more variety just because, yeah, to your point, Matt, not necessarily digging the heavy metal aesthetic too much, but that's just me personally.
I mean, it's not about the aesthetic itself for me. I think it's that the enemies blend into the background for me.
Fair.
Like they have the
Fair.
same color palette and the same level of saturation, which I think like is just like kind of annoying in terms of trying to find people.
Yeah, I was gonna
That's
say
fair.
if the heavy metal aesthetic is not for you, this is not the franchise for you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I like running and gunning, but I was also a person that thought, hey, you know what? I think Diablo 3 is lit well enough.
Yeah.
So take
Yeah.
that for what you will.
Fair.
Mhm.
Honestly, like one of my favorite things, like the 2016 Doom was one of my favorite games of that year. For what it's worth, it really was highly entertaining, and the heavy metal aesthetic was a big part of that. For what it's worth, but yeah,
Yeah. If I remember right, I feel
Yeah.
like that game like really helps that you're fighting essentially demons in like a
yes,
metal place, so they don't
Mars.
blend quite as much. Yeah, I mean like the background, you're like in metal facilities for the most part is what I meant.
Okay.
Instead of
Yep.
you're against like a kind of like reddish Mars background.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kind of. I
And-
think there was a lot of like reddish hue to that game as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say, in regards to aesthetic, that this does blend that heavy metal, kind of medieval with a bit of sci-fi, and I think it works for the most part, especially when you get to your dragon friend. Good blend, but yeah, we'll see how this goes. 15 more chapters. We'll see if if I stick with it, and two, if I'm able to finish it before my Game Pass expires. But moving on from, I guess, Doom: The Dark Ages, I also went to the movies this week. Rakush, I also believe you went to the movies as well.
I did, yeah.
But I think real quick, boys, I went to see Final Destination Bloodlines this week. And for some for a person who doesn't have an affinity for this franchise, one, I thought this would be a horror movie that, takes itself seriously just because although I've never watched this franchise before, from all the different trailers and commercials that I've seen for it, for how many films that houses, I always thought that this was a serious horror movie with stakes that, again, took itself really seriously. And the reason why we went to see Bloodlines is because we saw that it was getting really high praises critically. And we thought, hey, might as well, we need something to watch. Let's just go see this and eat some popcorn. And I was pleasantly surprised that this is, sure, it's still a horror adjacent film, but it more so to me was a dark comedy
Yeah.
where all the deaths in Final Destination are kind of played almost comedic in a way where every time someone dies, that's kind of the punchline to their elaborate death puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what really surprised me, where I was kind of expecting everyone to go, oh man, some strange force is trying to kill us. What do we do? To, wow, that person died in a manner that everyone is laughing around me. And have you guys watched the Final Destination movies before?
The
I watched a
original.
few of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it that vibe, Matt, for all of them? Like, is this just done for goofs?
Yeah, I mean, for me, they're all basically just elaborate Rube Goldberg death machines, and really, it's. I almost watch the Final Destination movies in the same way that I watch Mortal Kombat fatality compilations of like,
Okay.
oh, I wonder how they're gonna do it. Like it's almost like a spectacle thing for me, and also like a paranoia creator for me of oh no, I can't drive behind cars that have like or trucks that are carrying logs anymore or something like
Right,
that.
right. Where, yeah, I thought, I, I, I'll say this. I don't understand how this is rated so high, where I think it's because I don't have the affinity for this franchise, where that's
Mhm.
what people are kind of praising it for, just how it ties a lot of things together, how there's a lot of callbacks to previous movies. But for me, it was, as someone who doesn't necessarily like kind of gore adjacent horror movies or, horror movies in that realm, I think it was a lot of shock. It is going off that shock value, all these creative deaths, and essentially, again, using these killings as a punchline. Where it is a entertaining, I don't know, under 2 hour film, something nice to eat popcorn with, or maybe not eat if depending on how your stomach is. But I I don't know. I didn't find it that satisfying, but again, maybe I'm just not a fan of these types of movies where at the end I can admit that I chuckled at a few deaths, but yeah, it was the equivalent of junk food to me,
Mhm.
which as someone who eats a lot of junk food, friends, take that for what you will. But Rakush, you also went to the movies this week.
Mhm.
I know I spoke about Thunderbolts a few weeks ago, and as someone with a comic book background and affinity for certain characters, how was your time with the latest Marvel movie?
Um, Interesting. I think okay. I want to be careful about how I approach this conversation because the way I'm reacting to this movie has less to do with the comic book counterpart and has more to do with the subject matter that they cover as well. Um Not going to get into the details around the themes, but I guess mild spoilers on what the themes are. A big talking point in this movie is mental health for a lot of the characters involved, not all of them, but it is very central to the development or the current predicaments, if you want, of all the characters that are in this movie. And this movie's been getting a lot of praise, and from what I've seen, it's been a lot of praise for the subject matter, which is the mental health conversations and things like that. And after watching the movie, I'm just not sure I necessarily fully bought that, like, they had a good conversation around it, and that's where it's a little bit conflicting right now, because I appreciate that some of these, like, bigger blockbuster movies are trying to cover certain topics around this, but then also at the same time, like, I'm not sure that I feel like they did a good job with talking about mental health and, like, anxiety and depression and some of the other sort of, like, diagnosed sort of mental health illnesses that are out there as well. And it just kind of, like, to me feels very bare bones in a way that I wish they had gone a little bit deeper into these conversations without also having, like, your Marvel registered trademark logo humor added every 5 seconds in. Because God forbid, like, the audience has to sit with, like, an uncomfortable thought for 30 seconds in a Marvel movie, And it just, man, like, there's so many things about that movie that, like, again, like, well intentioned, but I think it's just more it's just more an indication of me being burned out with Marvel movies, I think. Like, I don't think this movie's done enough to get me back to feeling excited about Marvel movies anymore. I just didn't particularly love it.
Yeah, that's fair. And I know when I spoke about it a few weeks ago, I was a bit higher on the movie just because, to the point, uh, again, I was surprised that for a major summer blockbuster, especially from Marvel Studios, that they kind of used mental health and depression and anxiety
Mm-hmm.
as essentially a foundation to the overall story. And I think that was surprising uh, to me personally. And I do have to go back just to see exactly what I said. But uh, with the time passes, I do agree that it might not have been handled, I want to say, 100, at least how I perceive
Mm-hmm.
uh, good handlings of mental health representation. There has been a lot of thought pieces since its release discussing it about, how it was handled, what could have been done better. But I think it is that sentiment of this, while it might not have fully, landed on the runway all like 100%. I think there was just that element of, oh, Marvel actually did do something like this. And I think I'm of two minds of that. One, it's will they continue to tell stories like this in the future? And then two, when we think about a century and we think about the void as a character and as a concept of a villain, how they will handle that in future Marvel projects, where although it's nice to see them tackling different, I guess, mental health this way, it's also that curiosity for me personally of, will they continue to do that with the same regards or more respect in the future, or will it be reduced in a way, if that kind of makes sense?
It does. And
Where, yeah, like with Doomsday coming up, with Secret Wars coming
yeah,
up, and them establishing the Void as this big threat, how I just don't know where it fits in the Marvel kind of production camp of, how will the neuter it in a way, will they nerf it in a way, is kind of what I'm thinking, just because sure it works in the Thunderbolts, but I don't think the Avengers will. I think it doesn't work in kind of the spectacle that the Avengers is trying to do. But maybe that's just me being a pessimist when it comes to the Marvel franchise, where on one hand, I'm glad that this is something different. It's something that I didn't expect from Marvel Studios, but at the same time, it's still something that I hope is handled with better care moving forward. And I'm not sure if the if summer blockbusters will allow for it.
Yeah,
But
and just to kind of
yeah.
like backtrack on a couple of things as well that you mentioned, right? Like there's a I fully agree with everything that you said there. Like, it might not be the best sort of studio, it might not be the best kind of movie to have these conversations. I want them to at least try, right? And this is, I
Mhm.
would say, not the first time that Marvel Studios has tried to have conversations around this, where like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Thor Love and Thunder, I think it's Love and Thunder, I can't remember. But like both of those also focused on a certain theme of grieving or a theme of loss. But I don't think those handled it well. Or yeah, I don't think they handled it well. The thing with Thunderbolt, I think they handled it sincerely, but I'm not sure they handled it well. And I think that to me was personally kind of like the conflict here, where I can see that
Mm.
there's a certain care that goes into writing what they wrote, but it is still a Marvel movie. And Marvel movies in general are just to me at this point, it's kind of like how like you have your tech companies that are always trying to hit certain things, right? Like you have a checklist. We got to do this, because we want to maximize whatever it is, or like we have a certain thing we're trying to achieve that's quantifiable. It's data driven almost in a weird way, and I think the conflict that comes up with a conversation like this in a Marvel movie is, to me personally, a Marvel movie feels like one of these data driven productions. And so, where exactly is the sincerity fitting in? And then, is it sincere at that point, or is it just a piece of data that they're like, applying to a production? And that disconnect absolutely exists, even within the confines of this movie. For me, for example, right? Like we we have this well acted out scene with Florence Pugh talking about like just kind of like her whole like daily routine and like the feeling of just like nothing matters and the depression that goes into it. It is very sincere. And then you have her dad speaking in this corny ass Russian accent that like how am I supposed to take that seriously, for example, right? But then like, and this is spoilers for the next couple of minutes for anybody listening. Maybe we'll put a timestamp in it. But like the movie to me doesn't feel like it ends with kind of like an acknowledgement of, hey, that's shitty. It ends with just Marvel being Marvel, which is we need to set up the next movie. And in the process of setting up the next movie, I feel like all these things that they spend, what was it, like 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever the runtime was, minus 5 minutes, they spent all that time setting these topics up, but then it's just a Marvel movie at the end of the day, and I feel like that is where all of these things ring a little bit hollow for me. But then at the same time, do they just stop talking about this entirely? And I think that's the difficulty with like talking about something like mental health in a big blockbuster movie like this nowadays for me is that I just I want them to, but it would come at the expense of studio involvement. And I think these studios are just way too big at this point to be hands off with these movies. And that's what sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely see where you're coming from, Rakush, where I think for me personally, at the end of the day, it the Thunderbolts to me, again, I went in expecting nothing just because again, it's that Marvel fatigue. It's this is essentially Marvel's Suicide Squad, and this could have just been your run of the mill, hey, we have bombs in our throats. We need to stop this big bad, and we're gonna be heroes at the end of the day. And to its credit, I will say that I was pleasantly surprised by the end of the movie that it is exploring this aspect of mental health, of trauma, of depression, and trying to kind of tackle it, acknowledge it, and even live with it by the end of it. Where I still give it points for at least trying, just because again, I didn't expect it, let alone from a Marvel movie at this time. But the more I'm away from seeing it, times past, I get to kind of rest on it. It is the fact that, as you said, Rakush, it ends on that Marvel, that trademark Marvel stinger
Yeah.
that we're all used to now, where as much as I want them to continue to explore it and to actually give it not necessarily, yeah, more respect, more care, more attention. I don't think you can do that moving forward, especially when you're trying to set up an ensemble cast, and you're trying to create spectacle. And I think that's what also makes me conflicted, where it works for the Thunderbolts. I just don't see it working in Avengers. And maybe I'm just being too hard on it, and maybe I've just been kind of maybe it is still the Marvel fatigue talking, but I was a lot more excited at the end of Thunderbolts 3 weeks ago than I currently am right now. But I still enjoyed it for what it was. But yeah, there is a part of me that kind of
Hmm.
does hope that it there's a future where Thunderbolts is handled better uh, in a sequel, but I'm not sure if we'll see that sequel is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But
And I guess like the last thing I would say about this movie, because I know we have to move on after this point as well, but the last thing I will say about just mental health in general, in my personal experience at least, it's not something that you just acknowledge once and it's done. It it is a constant, right? Like you're constantly working towards not becoming a better person, but like just changing things about your life to feel better about yourself, or like, just in general, for like there might be parts of how we approach things that we don't necessarily like, and we work towards it every single day. And I think that part is also kind of missing from the end of Thunderbolts, where it's like you're not gonna get all of that within 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, but like that acknowledgement of like the work doesn't just end with the acknowledgement was missing. And I feel like that's a very important part about these conversations too. And if you cannot add that element to this part of the conversation, then yeah, like then I would say this is not the conversation to have in whatever media it is that you're following. And I think yeah, like that also really just kind of added to a big sort of feeling of like this is an incomplete conversation combined with all the other sort of jaded feelings around like Marvel movies being by the numbers, that it just did not sit all that well with me personally. Sincere, but yeah, it wasn't necessarily what I was reading about.
fair. One more question for you personally, Rakush,
Sure.
regarding Thunderbolts. So for a minute now, Stephen Yoon was attached to play Sentry. Uh, how much? What do you think if he stayed on Thunderbolts? How do you think his Sentry would have been in comparison to kind of Lewis Pullman's portrayal?
uh there is a very obvious scene with Julia Louis Dreyfus's character that would be very different. I can tell you that much for
Hmm.
sure. That was also, by the way, sorry. This is absolutely a me thing. I am very jaded with a lot of talk around some of these things too. But the whole like skirting the subject of why he needed to be blonde thing did not sit right with me.
Fair, fair. And yeah, I guess as you said, we've been at this a bit, so I guess our friends listening can take that for what you will. But uh again, as someone who has more of an affinity for Sentry than I do, Rakush, how did you feel overall about their portrayal in the movie?
That was pretty accurate overall. I would say like just the like Sentry Void part of it. But you are also right. Like, where does this fit in with like this big bad showing up? Like, are they just gonna do with him what they did with the Hulk? Right? Like every step of the way, constantly depowering this character. Like, how is that gonna happen? I don't know. So yeah, that'll be weird.
Yeah. And to your final point just now before I ask you those random questions, the acknowledgement portion where if Sentry appears in the Avenger, or not even if, when he does appear in the movies, you would hope that there would be that acknowledgement, just an update, just to see how he's kind of living with it, where he fits in with the team and where he fits in this overall narrative. But again, when it is that ensemble cast and you're kind of trying to balance all these things happening, and let's face it, when we do get to Doomsday, your central point will be Doom. Will it's hard to see where the acknowledgement is going to be there, since you would want it to have time to resonate, but I feel like it would kind of be a flash in the pan at that point, and maybe even a stepping stone to establish Doctor Doom in a certain way. But again, that's just the kind of cynical Marvel fan in me regarding these movies. But Rakush, final words on the Thunderbolts.
Yeah, I mean, keep trying if you're a big studio. I don't think big studios are listening to us necessarily, but like, give the creators more breathing room to do their own thing with these conversations, instead of like, setting all these restrictions around it has to be this movie and whatever you want to fit in within these confines works. I think like, let the creators get a little bit more freedom to have these conversations, and I think you'll see better results. But until then, it's just more of the Marvel slop that they keep giving you like 3-4 times a year.
And so that was a long-winded way of us saying we'll talk about Fantastic Four when that comes out in a few weeks as well. But Rakush,
yes,
it's that time of the show right now where you have to challenge not only Matt and I, but our friends out there listening. So Rakush,
Jaren,
I believe it is your turn to lay down the Don't Match Me challenge.
It sure is. Guys, what is Don't Match Me? Don't Match Me is a game where Jaren, Matt, and I, we try to answer differently for a set of 5 questions, and you, the listener, as well. You try not to match with me, the hard mode. You're trying not to match with Jaren or Matt either. As mentioned, it's a series of 5 questions, and for this week, guys, we just talked about Thunderbolts, so I figured, you know what? It's pretty obvious where I gotta go with this. And the first thing that comes to mind with Thunderbolts, it's a type of USB cable, guys. So my first question for you in this entire list, name a type of USB cable.
Okay. I may need to go to the jury for this one, but I think I have it.
Hell yeah. All right. In 3, 2, 1. I'm going with the USB Type-C 3.0.
Ooh. All right, all USB-C's
Okay.
3.0 now? Or by default, I mean? Or I guess you're just giving
Yes, they
formal
are.
full name of the product.
That is the formal full name.
Uh-huh.
However, there are previous versions that aren't 3.0, and that answer is for me to be able to say, hey guys, it's an option. Jaren, let's go with you first.
Okay. Guys, I'm going to go with the micro USB cable, because I have my battery pack right now, you charge it via micro USB. And let's just say I can't find a micro USB cable in my bucket of USB cables right now. So that thing remains uncharged.
How old is the battery pack?
Pretty old. Let's just say that.
Micro? I think I have a lot of micro USB cables.
Might have to drop by that album. But Matt, what did you say?
I mean, I kind of just went normally on this. I went with the classic USB-A. The standard, the big boy.
Old-fashioned, old reliable.
Mm-hmm.
It's the old fastball. All right, guys. Jaren kind of alluded to this, but question number 2. Name a device that you can charge a battery in. Doesn't have to be with a USB cable, but typically is with a USB cable. But just need you guys to name a single device that you can charge a battery in. In 3, 2, 1. I'm going to go with a video game controller.
Ooh, damn.
Fair.
Damn.
Fair. That's a good one.
Damn.
Yeah. Matt, did you lose?
I got. I specifically went with the PlayStation 3 controller.
Oh, damn.
Ooh, that's rough. Before I give you the second option that I was going to pick, Jared, what do you got?
Okay, so I'm going to the jury with this one. I went with my Hyundai SUV vehicle, because
What?
that had, guys, my Hyundai lets me charge my phone a number of different ways, because one, I can I can, or even a battery, let's just say, because one, there's the USB port that if I plug it in, it will still charge my phone. But that's how I connect it to the Android Auto app. But if I use the other USB port, that just directly charges it. There's no connectivity there.
I'll give you this answer.
Or if I put it on the mat underneath the stereo, that's a wireless charger.
Yeah, okay.
That's 3 charging stations in my Hyundai SUV.
See, at first I thought you were saying you bought an electric vehicle and this is your way of announcing it. So I was like, oh shit, congrats, bro. But then
I also thought that you bought an electric vehicle and that you charge it through like just USB-C or something.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's ambitious.
Give it 15 years, man. Give it 15
Do you think
years.
USB-C is still going to be around 15 years? Do you think it's that much of a standard now?
Now we'll be up to... No, I think we'll be at USB-G, I think.
Should I just say it?
Say it.
Guys, will we be around in 15 years?
Yeah. Jaren embracing the sweet concept of death here, I see.
GTA 7. Do you think it's going to...
GTA 6 might not be out by 15 years.
Oh, man. Okay.
No, to answer your question, no, I don't think GTA 7 will be out in 15 years.
Same. Honestly, same.
Guys, if GTA 7 is out in 15 years, it might be in like 8K resolution.
Oh, man.
Speaking of video resolutions, here's the next question. I want you guys to pick a video resolution.
Ooh. You're talking about specifically like a video resolution, not like just like a monitor's resolution, right?
Video monitor, I would say video resolution.
Okay.
Yeah, I think video resolution is a little bit more streamlined. Okay. I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. I'm going to go with a little bit of an OG one, a throwback one, 480p. That is 640 by 480, a 4:3 aspect ratio.
Man.
Also, apparently I'm such a hipster, which I had such a difficult time accepting as a younger lad, but I'm such a hipster that if I see a 4:3 video nowadays, I instantly add 2 extra points to my final score on that video.
Oh, man. I wanted to pick that, but I couldn't remember what exactly the number was.
I'm pretty sure that was like the Nintendo Wii.
Yeah, it was, but, yeah.
Yeah. But also widescreen. It was kind of weird. Jaren, what's your answer?
Guys, I don't think I understood this question because I went with my current screen resolution, I guess. So I went with 1440p.
That's fine.
But I'm not sure what actually this question's saying, so I'm going to go with that.
1440p is a thing. Let me just look it up here, though. Because there is an aspect ratio dimension for that.
That's like 21:9, isn't it?
I'm specifically looking for the numbers.
Wait, no, guys, I'm not even on my 1440p monitor. That's at the other place.
I think 1440 is like 25,000?
2560 by 1440, yeah. Also labeled Quad HD.
Let's go with that one.
Guys, I just went with normal HD. I went with 1080p.
Old classic.
The classic.
To this date, it's the fastball of resolutions. I wonder what the fastball of like charging a device is, but I don't know. Phones maybe? But I don't know. Guys, you guys have Steam Decks.
No.
You guys are streaming games onto your Steam Decks on various video resolutions. However, there's a certain internet speed that is required. Do not correct me on that, Jared. I do not know if you can go on various video resolutions, but just for the purpose of the segue, let's just say it is various video resolutions. But guys, you need a certain internet speed for this one. However, I'm not going to ask for just one internet speed. I am going to ask you guys, in the history of internet existing, to name an internet speed that is typically available through like internet packages that you would sign up for.
I feel like we're just about to put Canadian internet on blast right now.
We absolutely are, yes.
Oh, man.
Okay, so you're just saying name internet speed? Is that what the question is?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to go in 3, 2, 1. Guys, I'm going to go with the gigabit internet speed. And I'm going to go with gigabit because it just sounds real cool.
Okay.
I don't know, gigabit. Gigabit. Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's cool. 2 G's in it.
Oh, man.
Jaren, what you got?
I think I lose.
Did you go gigabit?
No, I went with my current speed, which I might not have for since my 1 year promo credit's about to end. So I'm gonna have to make a difficult phone call this
Uh-oh.
week. But boys, I went with 1.5 down because that's my current
Yeah.
download speed, which I guess
1.5 what?
is
Oh, 1.5
gigabit.
gigabit? Okay. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Guys, I went with a very early speed that I remember having, and looking back, now, it hurts me to look at. I went with 10 megabit down, 1 megabit up.
Ooh. Ooh. We lived a
Yeah.
life, eh?
Yeah. Oh, man.
The things we have lived through. Dial up.
I'm pretty sure places
Yeah,
still
no,
offer that.
I do think places still offer that. And when I look at it, I'm like, oh no, it's 2025. Why is Canadian internet like this? And that's probably gonna cost like $80.
Guys, Canadian internet is so bad.
Oh man.
Do you guys
Yeah.
think like the younger generation knows what the dial-up sounds like?
I don't think so.
That's an interesting one. I might try this with some coworkers tomorrow.
Honestly, Rakush, I feel like people that are maybe like, I don't know, 7 years younger than us won't know what the dial-up sound is.
Ooh, that's an. Oh, okay. I'm gonna try this out. I don't. So basically, you got to be 30 plus to know what the dial-up sounds like.
I think 25
Interesting.
would be my guess on like that's the last people who would know what it sounds like.
Interesting. Okay, last question. We're almost done here, guys. I've asked a lot of questions around like cables and charging and technical specs and stuff like that. There is a character in the Marvel Universe called Cable, so I figure why not try to bring it back into the Marvel Universe? Name a character from the X-Men.
Ooh.
In 3, 2, 1. I'm gonna go with Cable.
Oh. Ooh.
Boys, I went with, of course, Emma Frost.
Ooh.
This guy.
Guys,
Jaren's a real yearner.
I went for the titular X-Men. I went with Professor X. Wait, okay, hang on. Is Professor X in the X-Men, or does he just like own them?
He's technically part of the
Okay.
X-Men. Also, I don't know if he's a titular character now that I think about it, but maybe that's a later episode conversation.
Okay, is that just like lore that I don't know? I always thought it was like named after him.
Xavier Men? Like, that's what you think it stands for?
No, I don't think it like stands for Xavier, man. I thought like the X is like it's his thing. Maybe that's not how the word titular goes.
Yeah, well, if it's titular...
Yeah, I guess titular
right.
has to
so
be.
if it were titular, it would be
yeah,
Xavier
okay.
Men.
I'm going with the team owner, Professor X.
Team owner, yeah. Manager,
Uh-huh.
general manager. Yeah, I would give you
Mhm.
that one. That was this week's Don't Match Me. No real theme to it except cables.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of.
Guys, I'm shopping for internet right now because I might have to shop for internet in a few weeks. 30 megabits per second, so 30 down. Not $32 for the first 12 months, and then after that it goes up to
Don't get
$65.
32
Jaren,
down.
stop playing a video game again.
Jared, 32 megabits down? Don't get it. You said megabits?
No, of course
okay.
I'm not getting it, but I'm just saying this is the state
Mhm.
we're in right now. 100 down, that's $38 for the first 12 months, and then that goes to $75.
That's half decent.
And then if I want, I don't know, guys, I'm gonna miss my fiber to home when I ultimately lose it because I do not want to pay 120 plus. And then my current provider does that thing where sure we'll lock you into your offer, but then every 3 months we're gonna add $5 to your bill for reasons. So I hate internet. But that's the mistake zone for the week. Another beefy boy episode. As always, I want to thank one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Matt Alba, for joining me this week and editing this podcast.
Yeah, thanks, man. As always, I want to thank you for hosting this episode. And, I'm very surprised that we reached almost 2 hours on this recording.
Yes. I also want to thank one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Rakush, for joining me this week. Thanks, Rakush.
Thanks, buddy. And to the listeners, go get therapy.
I want to thank therapy. I don't want to thank Canadian internet. And that's it. I want to thank Perry's because pairing stuff feels real good. Matt, take it away.
This has been Mistake Zone, and we're all out of journaling methods for blueprints.
Until the vault episode.